Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this session. Thanks for staying with us. This will be the best session, I promise. It's on innovation and entrepreneurship, the next new frontier. My name is Trevor Moss. I'm a reporter with the Wall Street Journal based here in Manila. Over the next 50 minutes or so, we'll be talking about new technologies, new ways of doing things, and really thinking about how we can take those new ideas and give them practical economic and social impacts. Above all, how they can help to really deal with the things that APEC wants to look at this week, which is addressing social inequality and really managing the wealth gap that we're seeing emerge in many developing countries. We're very lucky to have 4 panelists here today with some amazing experience in the public and private sector who can, I think, shed some real light on these questions for us here today. So first, allow me to introduce His Excellency President Juan Manuel Santos of Colombia. Welcome. Next, please join me in welcoming Mr. Vincent SIEW, who is here as the representative of the leader of Chinese Taipei and was formerly the vice president of Chinese Taipei. Next, please join me in welcoming Terry Brady, who is the Chief Legal and Commercial Officer of UNDERWRITERS Laboratories. Mr. SIEW, I'm going to move you over here if that's okay. Yeah, and then we'll stick with the right order. Terry. And lastly but not least, I'd like to welcome Dana HYDE, who is the CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Welcome. Well, I'd like to kick off the discussion first with a question to President Santos. And I think your being here is a great opportunity for those of us who focus on Asia to get the perspective from your part of the world. As president, how do you approach the challenge of technological disruption and try to guide your country safely to this next new frontier that we're talking about? I mean, which technologies do you see as being disruptive, and which do you think you should embrace as president, and which do you think you need to be more careful about, maybe to protect jobs or industries, for example?
Well, we are giving technology tremendous importance to enhance our development in many ways. First, we connected every municipality, and we have 1,100, with fiber optic and broadband, every school, and we are then trying to encourage innovation and the development of software. On the other hand, Colombia is very rich in biodiversity. We're the second richest after Brazil, number 1 in many species. And today's revolution is on biotechnology. So we are trying to sort of connect the dots between biodiversity, our richness in biodiversity, and how can we use that to get involved and attract the companies that are developing biotechnology. This has been also identified as a priority. And third, we are trying to use technology in giving better basic services, the usual telemedicine, teleeducation. We are trying to give access, especially to poorest people, the access to technology in also many ways. We've given hundreds of thousands of computer tablets to the most vulnerable people. The housing projects, especially the popular housing project, all are connected in order to encourage the use of technology. And so for us, technology is a vital way to try to enhance our development. We are also using, and we can speak about that later, innovation in the public policy and the fight against poverty, but I think this is something that we're going to discuss later on.
I think a lot of those examples might be familiar here in the Philippines as well. We can talk later. Vincent Xiao, I think Chinese Taipei, as many people will know, is a terrific case study when we're talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. You just look at the Taiwanese economy's transition over the last few decades to the high-tech economy that it is now. Maybe you could tell us about how Chinese Taipei has fostered that innovation, and maybe something about your government strategy looking forward, about how you aim to retain that position.
Well, we certainly, in the past 50 years of economic development, we have gone through from a very underdeveloped or so-called factor-driven stage, then gradually transfer to capital-driven stage. They come to now the innovative-driven stage. But all this stage has to be transferred, not an easy work. It has to be, well, of course, taken by a kind of a concerted efforts between the public and the private, between the government and the industry. And the government certainly has to take a lot of policy, try to encourage the private sectors to engage in R&D and innovation. But unfortunately in Taiwan, in the Chinese Taipei, most of our businesses are dominated by the small and medium size. So they don't have the capability to do that for a long-term plan. So what we can do is the government has to do more, to use their polished tools to push that. But fortunately, with these kind of efforts, now where we can transform from a so-called labor-intensive industry or consumer products industry now to the high-tech industry. Now it comes to the service industry and so on. So this is a long way to go. Well, if I have time, I will take this opportunity to tell the Taiwan story, share with you the Taiwan story. And we have a lot of our very successful entrepreneurs here with us. They all can share with you their successful story. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Brady, UL, of course, a company that works with a range of clients on safety science. Based on those broad experiences, maybe you could tell us, something about the really exciting global technology trends that you're seeing emerging at the moment that I think governments and companies here will really want to harness.
Sure, Trevor. There are any number that I could point to, but let me just highlight 4 that we're paying a lot of attention to at UL. One is the Internet of Things, right? The evolution of products to make them better and to make them easier to use. Sensors and components become communicative, and they can communicate with other devices and with things like road safety systems. Advanced manufacturing, or 3D printing, is really revolutionizing the way that products are designed, prototyped, and ultimately produced. Very early, but a massively disruptive technology. the rise of mobile banking in particular. Just as I was sitting here listening to the opening panel, a World Bank study was released that many of you might have popped up in your Twitter feeds that said, of the top 10 countries that use mobile banking today, the highest percentage by population, you might be surprised, is Botswana. The next 5 are also African nations that are really in the early emerging stages. Their people don't have access to brick and mortar banks as we do, and so the top 6 mobile bank users by percentage are African nations, followed by South Korea and the US. And the fourth would be distributed energy, combination of storage, increased use of batteries for storage of energy, and also microgrids, as these same emerging economies try to electrify their villages and their rural areas. Distributed energy is I'd say the fourth on my list. Each one of these brings common issues. They're different, but themes: usability, interoperability, environment, safety, security, and reliability. All these emerging technologies that are so exciting give all of us, I think, and certainly our team at UL, a lot of things to think about on safety, security, reliability, interoperability.
Yeah, I know a lot of those systems you're talking about are being rolled out here in the Philippines, maybe in a nascent way, but they're becoming more mainstream, and it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. We're going to have an open discussion here today, so I'll be asking you in the audience to pose some questions to our panelists shortly. But first, Dana Hyde, I know the goal of the Millennium Challenge Corporation is to unlock the economic potential of developing countries, like the Philippines and Indonesia, where I know you have programs going on at the moment. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your experiences in those countries and what's been innovative about your approach there, and how have you tapped the creativity and the entrepreneurship that's already out there?
Thank you. So it's a great question. The Millennium Challenge Corporation, as you know, is actually an international development agency. We are a bilateral foreign assistance agency of the US government, and created just 10 years ago to be unique in a number of key ways. The first way is that MCC's sole mission is to help address poverty through economic growth. So not any particular sector, but to work across sectors. The second, as you mentioned, which is MCC, is specifically designed to unlock private sector capital. So not just development dollars, but how do we put private capital to work and actually unlock the impediments to private investment, which I'll speak of in a minute. And the third feature is a real commitment to a country-led model, as well as data and transparency. And we've heard a lot today about the conversation around inclusive growth and the role that data and transparency and government policies play to that. So we are working across the globe. Over the last decade, the portfolio has been roughly $10 billion. 65% of that has been invested in Africa. 70% of that overall has been invested in infrastructure. But our portfolio in Asia is growing. We have currently about $1 billion invested across Asia, and we expect to do another $1 billion in the next 2 years. Here in the Philippines, the approach is really a balance between the hard and the soft. So we, as I mentioned, we work in infrastructure. We are working in one of the poorest regions of the Philippines to rehabilitate a secondary road to create markets and access. But we're also working on capacity and reforms, particularly in domestic resource mobilization, so helping the government to capture more of the revenue so it has some more of the resources to invest. And finally, we're working in a community-based project throughout the country, doing a number of smaller scale infrastructure projects of different types. In Indonesia, you see us working explicitly in public-private partnerships. So I would say that is probably the #1 way that we are working through PPPs to unlock private capital. And we're also, though, doing the capacity piece that I spoke of. There, the reforms relate to the procurement system of the country, and helping the government roll out a different and more transparent and open measure of procurement.
Okay, before opening it up to the floor, I just wanted to ask you one more question. Just, I'm sure our colleagues in government would be interested to know your view.
Yes.
I mean, through your lens, the MCC do you think creating these effects is really a question of promoting good governance at the top, or is it really about enabling the people at the bottom who have that creativity, who have the ideas, but maybe just need assistance to realize them?
Sure. I would say it is surely both, but the latter is often very dependent on the former. That is, I think it's hard to underestimate the degree to which government policies help to create an enabling environment for innovation to flourish. And that can be at a national level, it can be at a local level. A unique feature of the way that we work that focuses very much on this point is that MCC selects countries for eligibility on the basis of a scorecard that tracks 20 indicators. And these are indicators of international organizations, the IMF, the IFC, the World Bank, and we're only looking to work in low-income and lower middle-income countries. But 8 of those indicators relate to the degree to which a country has positions that help economic freedoms in the country, gender in the economy, the regulatory environment, and the like. The other 2 categories relate to the degree to which a country itself invests its resources in its people, in health and education, and many of the facets we've heard about today. And then finally, the governance structure around fighting corruption, rule of law, political rights and civil liberties are 2 other categories. So that is really a prism through which we are looking that reflects the theory of the case, which is the importance and the centrality of governance to helping spur growth and innovation.
I think a lot of those themes are very resonant with what President Aquino was saying earlier. I'm sure he'd argue that the Philippines is the next new frontier already. I'd like to invite anybody in the audience who has some questions for our panelists. The gentleman down here, yes.
Liu Dongguan from Taiwan. I'd like to address this question to Terry Brady and also Vincent Xiao. We all know, let's say, car companies, many have faced recalls, like Toyota with seat belts, Honda also, Volkswagen now has trouble with emissions. Now, I heard the story that like Tesla, a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, had a car that burnt. And a week later, or 2 weeks later, another car burnt. Now, when they did the research, they found that the reason for it was because the car was too low. So all they had to do was to raise the car by 1 inch. And so what they did was in their factories or their home office, they dialed in their computers, and within a short period of time, all the cars that were out there were raised 1 inch, and the problem was no longer a problem. So they didn't have a recall issue, they have no image problems. Now, the reason I said Terry Brady was, he said all these things which is very important, the evolution of products, services and products, advances in manufacturing, production, mobile banking, distributed energy, all these different things. Now, it's easy for us to say these are available, but for an O-line company to make changes is next to impossible or difficult. And I wondered, for example, if Vincent Xiao can elaborate, say Taiwan has like ITRI. Now, if ITRI could make a specialized effort to do studies on different manufacturing processes, all these new technologies, and show these other O-line companies how to apply these to their O-line products and make it more efficient, wouldn't that be something of benefit not only to Taiwanese companies, but to companies all over the world? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. When Mr. Liu talked about ITRI, let me elaborate more in details of our policy. Actually, in the course of our economic development, we certainly, I have already said that we have a very strong relation between the public and the private sectors. And because of most of our private sectors belongs to the small and medium-sized SMEs. So what government can do is that we have to recognize that the SME has no resources and take no risk to engage in a sustainable R&D. So government has to introduce an institution to engage in the long-term R&D. E3 is so-called Industrial Technology Research Institute in Taiwan. That was established 40 years, more than 40 years ago, when government tried to transform our economic structure into high-tech oriented. Then we have that institution, we have funded by the government and of course support by the private sectors to engage in that. And E3 so far employ about 6,000 engineers and researchers. So they have not only in the course of their research, they support and of course help the private sectors to solve a lot of these so-called technology handicap, to have a breakthrough. They also provide the engineers to the private sectors. So from that, E3 will spin off a lot of their research products. And this become a very unique institution in the course of Taiwan IT's industry. So Mr. Liu talked about this E3, whether we can continue to that. Certainly government has already, I asked E3 to focus on this new technology for the next generation. But still we need more effort. Not only, we cannot just rely on one institution to do that. So the universities all over Taiwan. In Taiwan, we have a small population, but we have 167 universities and technology college. Those are all where they are all asked to join efforts with the government, try to promote more IT industry and we are more innovative industry. Therefore, we see we have STC, the chairperson, Ms. Wong here. We have Jolin Xu of ASUS. We have Monsieur.
Also good Taiwanese companies here.
MyTech. And then we have, even in the service of finance, we have Ms. Chai Hong Tu of the Cassette Financial Holding Company. They are all very successful, innovative companies.
Yes, I'd like to give Terry Brady a chance as well to answer the second half. Terry, I think part of that question was to you, and maybe you could give us the private sector side of that.
Sure, very briefly. All these new technologies bring with them new challenges, and we, because our mission is to help create safe living and working environments for people everywhere, we engage in a lot of dialogue with governments, with stakeholders, to help come up with benchmarks and standards that bring safety and reliability to some of this new technology. Take batteries for an example. You know, the Tesla, as the gentleman referred, well, that's the entire undercarriage of a Tesla, of course, is one big system of batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are making all our lives much more convenient, but we're all reading about issues with lithium-ion batteries. A couple of cargo airlines have been lost when the cargoes took fire. And so just in the last couple of years, for example, Underwriters Laboratories opened up in Chinese Taipei, it so happens, an advanced battery lab where we're testing batteries for safety and reliability. I mentioned microgrids earlier, and microgrids aren't just for rural and emerging economies. The city of New York and building owners there are, after Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, are putting in massive battery banks 40 or 50 stories up in high-rises, in the middle of high-rises, to deal with energy consumption when the power goes out. Well, the New York City firefighters are panicked by that because you can't put water on these batteries that are 40 stories up. So we're working with battery manufacturers, with governments, with universities in a public-private partnership, as Ms. Hyde mentioned, that it helps to advance safety. So all of these new technologies bring new challenges. It's really together with people like those that are attending this conference. That's how we're going to figure out these solutions to these new challenges.
A few more hands in the audience just now. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Lady at the front here. Yes.
Hi, I just want to ask a question about the President SANTOS. Is that okay? Okay. Hi, Mr. President. I come from Shanxi Yihao Investment and Holding Company. It's very nice. I can have a conversation with you. Our subsidiary company, Yihao Mining Engineering Company, we will cooperate with the Pacific Coal in CAIPEI'S project, which located in your Colombia branchilla. As far as I know, we are the first Chinese private company who will bring funds, facility, and levers to your country. So I would like to know if there is any preferential, sorry, I can't remember the word, preferential policy for our company, and what's your view about the future coal industry? And what's more, our project will be started on June next year. We sincerely invite you to check our job. Thank you.
Coal.
Yes, I think the question was really about investors in Colombia. Are there any preferential treatment for maybe for Chinese or other companies, and how do you attract these companies?
We have a very pro-foreign investor policy, and we think that the best thing we can offer foreign investors is stability in the rules of the game, a healthy and strong macroeconomic environment. We also encourage investors to, we have some preferential schemes like free trade zones, or if they want to produce in Colombia, they have some special conditions that they can produce and then export to the rest of the Americas. We are located right in the middle of the Americas, and we have been able to attract quite a good number of foreign investors. Colombia is today, last year was the country who grew more in terms of foreign investment in the whole of Latin America. And I think the best attraction is stable rules of the game and a good economic environment. And of course, we are looking for more and more investment because we consider foreign investors our partners in growth. We are integrating with the rest of Latin America. We have the Pacific Alliance, which is probably the most successful integration process that Latin America has had. This is a market which is bigger than Brazil, and that has been attracting a lot of people.
Thank you.
But please consider investing in the Philippines too, which is terrific. There's a gentleman down here, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Mick Wilkes. I'm the CEO of Oceana Gold. We're a mining company that operates in the Philippines and in New Zealand and also in the USA and in Latin America, in Central America. My question is for Dana Hyde. Dana, we do a lot of work in these frontier regions dealing with a lot of poverty where there's very little infrastructure. Our Philippines project at Didipio is a good example of that. And I was wondering about your policies as a development agency for a government in relation to partnering with private enterprise for the development of infrastructure around specific mining projects or other resource-related projects which do operate in developing countries in very remote regions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So a bit more about MCC's model, which will help answer your question. I mentioned that the North Star is economic growth, and really how do we bring about inclusive economic growth. So MCC works with a core team in the country in which we're engaged. And the first undertaking is a constraints to growth analysis. So an analytic exercise that looks what are the primary impediments to private investment in this economy, and there are many, obviously. But so we typically will work, during the first decade, quite a bit of our work was in road infrastructure. Increasingly, much of our work is in energy infrastructure. That's not exclusive. We have worked and we are working in Mongolia, which I know is also a country that has a number of mining interests. But MCC will not start with an idea of which sector to go into. Rather, we will look for economists to help direct us, and then the country teams themselves to come up with particular concepts and projects. So that speaks to a little bit of how we shape where we will go. Once we do, though, we are looking for how do we leverage private capital in that particular sector. And then how do we target our investments to poverty? And how do we look at beneficiary analysis? So it often becomes the case that we're looking and searching for data, which has been part of the conversation today, around inclusive growth, and how do we take that to the next level? And then the structure of how we finance that. So it isn't the case that we will start usually in mining per se, and often it's broader in terms of infrastructure, but nothing is off the table from the beginning, and a lot of it depends on where the country itself wants to go.
Okay, we're running a little bit short on time, but probably time for one more. Yes, the gentleman there, hand straight up.
Good afternoon. This is William Chung from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, and I want to have a special note of congratulations to President Santos that thanks to a little help from John Chipman and the IISS, President Santos is here today. My question is related directly to the Pacific Alliance and Colombia. We are seeing a dichotomy with the momentum and the tranquility that we see in Latin America and the Pacific Alliance being a very vibrant, dynamic economic area that we see in the Pacific Alliance. But at the same time, we see that in the Asia-Pacific, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and APEC, 12 members in the TPP, 21 members in the APEC, they are not letting in new members. Correct me if I'm wrong, but APEC has not had new members since 1998. And TPP is new, and they're not hinting that they're going to take in any new members. So my question to President Santos is, how do you intend to engineer the integration of Colombia and the Pacific Alliance into the broader APEC framework, if you like? Thank you.
Well, that's precisely why I am here. We've been knocking on APEC's door for the last 25 years. I was the first Minister of Foreign Trade of Colombia, and since then, I've been trying to get a much closer relation with the Asia-Pacific countries. We started with the PBEC, then PEC, and now I am very honored to be the only country, not a member of the APEC, to be invited to this summit. And I hope that when the moratorium ends, and I hope it will end next year, it's lifted in Peru, then that we will be accepted. We have, I think, a great future there's a lot of room to grow in our trade and investment with the Asia-Pacific countries. Colombia right now is positioning itself as one of the leading countries in Latin America. We were the country who grew the fastest last year. We're bringing down poverty more than any other country in extreme poverty. We want to diversify, and therefore for us to get into APEC is a priority, and I hope that my presence here will help.
Thanks for those questions. I'm going to ask our panelists for some concluding remarks now in reverse order. Dana Hyde, we've talked a lot about the macro level, but I think a lot of people, a lot of creative people out there in the Philippines, for example, will say, we have this potential ourselves. How can government or business work with us to unlock that? Have you got any advice for those people who maybe see these multi-million-dollar grants and think, how is this going to help me?
Yes. So, the conversation that we've had and that we'll have over the next couple of days is how do citizens work with governments and work with the private sector to bring about growth and to bring about inclusive growth. And I really do think it's a triangle of all three. So, financing sources, I think the private sector obviously is driving much of the growth, and the challenge is how do government policies enable that to have a shared prosperity. And you mentioned the president's remarks this afternoon, and he spoke quite a bit about this. I think the components of that are many. We've talked about an enabling environment that sets clear rules of the road, that focuses on rule of law and corruption. But I also think that there's some very important cross-enablers of inclusive growth. I've mentioned data a number of times and transparency, both commitments that governments increasingly are adopting. The role of women that we speak to and how we empower girls and women through education and beyond is a powerful force. And I think it is really bringing together all of these policies with a commitment from the private sector, as well as some real infrastructure needs, quite frankly. We've talked a lot about the infrastructure needs that will bring, if it's tourism, that brings the macro growth. So from an individual level, there are many opportunities. I can't speak to all of them, depending upon which sector you're in and what area you're working in. Technology is another. And there was the reference to the mobile banking earlier. I think mobile banking in Africa, and what we've seen, much of our portfolios there, particularly in energy, is that there are completely new business models for solar to go into households that makes kerosene more expensive, that enables families through their mobile banking to pay a monthly rate and to have electricity for the first time ever. So I think a number of these technologies will leapfrog us there.
Yeah. The president's itching to jump in.
I wanted to tell you what we have done in Colombia, and it's worked very well. We decided to measure poverty in a different way, and we started with 4 or 5 other countries, what they call the multi-dimensional poverty. This is a concept that was developed in Oxford University by Professor Amir Tassen. What does that imply? You factor in the basic necessities of the poorest families, and you have, for example, 40, and then you follow each family, and you put the government to work to address each need of the families. And then when you have a percentage like 65 or 70%, you then graduate them from extreme poverty. Now that has worked very well. Colombia, in 5 years, brought down poverty by 12%. No other country has done that so fast. And extreme poverty, we halved. We brought it down 50%. And the private sector, what we did was tell the private sector, in your social responsibility, if you chip in with this process, you will multiply. The leverage would be much greater. And so this has been working very well. Now there are about 40 countries, 40. We started 5 countries, now 40 countries using this multidimensional index. It's different from the traditional index that you measure poverty by income. Now you measure poverty by basic necessities. And that will also help the governments focus your social investment much better. For example, if you measure access to health, access to education, the quality of the floor of your house. If you find that many people are lacking a good quality of the floor or the ceiling of your house, then you can invest more there, and the social return is going to be much higher.
I think, Terry Brady, just a last word. We heard a good example of the ability of technologies and government to really tackle the poverty issue. I mean, what's your view on that? Is it really a question of promoting, in places like the Philippines, promoting homegrown technology, helping those local innovators to deliver the solutions they see to problems on their own doorstep?
We're a big believer in local for local. The key is to identify local needs and then figure out how business and non-government organizations can tackle those local needs. I think Dana put it perfectly. A vast majority of Filipinos in rural areas have no access to banking at all. And if we can help them, for example, with mobile and with bringing electrification in a safe way that fits the local geography and economy here, then we'll be successful. So local for local, we think, is a big part of the solution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Vincent Xiao, we know that you're a champion of the SME. But do you think that helping these companies, is it a case of the government really holding their hand, or is it sometimes a case of government getting out of the way and leaving the private sector to do what it does?
I think government role in the national development certainly is to create a favorable and friendly environment for investors. But the second law is the government has to invest more on education, because after all, human resources is the most important asset of a country. So if we could spend more to have education, to educate the people to become skillful and then to become a professional, I think the whole society will be benefit, and generally kind of a middle class. So this is why we in the past, education budget always comes to the number one. Until recent year, of course, social welfare comes to number one. But education in the past 60 years of Taiwan, of Chinese Taipei's budget, government budget, it always comes to number one. That means that we attach great importance of the task to educate people. And that is the way that all innovation comes from the people. Therefore, this is what I think is a kind of experiences that we would like to share with you.
Thank you. And I'd like to give the last word to President Santos. Mr. President, there is actually a very vibrant tech scene here in Manila. It's quite small and quite young, but it's got a lot of good ideas coming out of it. I'm sure we'd be interested to hear if there's anything similar in your country and how you're helping those tech companies and what kind of things they're championing.
We are trying to promote in many ways. I'll give you two examples. Medellin, you remember Medellin was the city that everybody knew because of the drug cartel and the violence. Medellin won last year an award of being the most innovative city in the world. And that has been done by stimulating the young kids to go into and compete. What we want is, we connected the whole country with fiber optic broadband, but we want to encourage the young kids to develop applications for the base of the pyramid, not the top. You go to Silicon Valley, you're in the top. But we want very simple applications that will help the coffee grower, that will help the student, and we're having a good result. I'll give you one example. Security. They developed the application with Google, simply when you dial 999, the police said, in real time, the police can go to where you're dialing and be much more effective. This was done by some kids in one of the municipalities, and so they're flourishing in that respect. Three-dimensional movies and all kinds of different ways to encourage these people to promote their technology and their talent.
Terrific, terrific. Well, isn't it nice to end on such a positive note? Thank you for that. Well, thank you all for joining us. I don't want to keep you any longer from your evening cocktails, so thank you all for being here, and please join me in thanking our panelists.